Hi, it's Tanya. I wanted to give you a little bit of a story of my life, a little bit of idea of how I was born with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a disorder caused by a lack of oxygen to a developing brain. This can happen during birth, during pregnancy, or shortly after. Uh, Mine was caused at birth. I was born at 7.5 months. I was born in Christmas Valley, Oregon, and on November 29th. Here's the article that the paper, which I own no rights to, I just own the clipping, and I don't know what paper it was, folks. I have no idea. This clipping is 44 years old. Uh, North Lake County's disaster unit was called Sunday to take Mrs. Burt Lambert and baby daughter Tanya to the Bend Hospital. Tanya was born at home while Mrs. Lambert was by herself. Now, that is not completely true. There was no other adults there. My mother had my sister there with her, who was 23 months old at the time, which, of course, she was no help. While Mrs. Lambert delivered her daughter, took a nap, cleaned up things, walked about 2 blocks to the neighbors through about 3 inches of snow. Now, Mom didn't have a phone. She was by herself and had no choice but to go for help. She put my sister and I in front of what's called a baseboard heater. For those of you who don't know, this is a heater that's on the floor and it heats your home. And my sister was like, "Baby, mommy, baby." And Mom's like, "Yes, and you've got to watch the baby." And then she walked to get help. Now, the people she got called the disaster unit for did not give her a ride home. I don't know why, but they made her walk back. So she not only walked through 3 inches of snow 2 blocks to the neighbors after having the child and cleaning up the mess, she walked back the same amount of space. And the disaster unit was called, and this was in Bend, Oregon. Now, the reason why Mom was 7.5 months pregnant at the time, and in this picture you can see that I'm laying on a preemie baby diaper, and that's how small I was. I was 3 pounds 1 ounce when I was born, and Mom said when the disaster unit got there, I had hardly no heartbeat, hardly no blood pressure. I had a pulse, but it was very, very weak. And they wrapped me in a silver blanket. There I'm showing my attitude. Even from being a kid, I had an attitude. And Mom said I looked like a little leftover. And they told my mom, who, come to find out, had hepatitis, that I wouldn't make it to midnight. And Mom said that she had thought, and when I was a kid, I didn't understand, but she thought, well, she does, she does. When I asked her about that later, because I was very angry about that statement, was that she meant that since I had made it as far as I had so far, she did not think I would die. She knew I would live and did not want to get into an argument basically with the doctor. But that she thought she knew that I would live. We had no phone, and Christmas Valley, which is where I was born, has 78 people now. So it probably had even less then. And it's 2 hours outside of Bend, Oregon. So the ambulance took 2 hours just to get there. So it was 4 hours round trip, not including the time they spent at the house. Mom, turns out, had, like I said, hepatitis. The thing is, my birth father was a cowboy, and he worked on a cattle farm. And they were drinking from a pond, and they didn't know it was contaminated, and they didn't even know what hepatitis was. My mother was only 21. She likes to say she was very young and very dumb. My father got hepatitis, and he came home. He thought he had the flu. He had no idea what it was, what he had, or how dangerous it could be. So when he came home, my mom caught it, and it led to my early birth. I was born breech at home in the bathroom, and the only thing Mom had to assist her through the labor, other than a 23-month-old baby, was a little mirror from her compact from her purse, which I still do have. These pictures come into play when Mom was taken to the hospital. She was able to hold me one time right after I was born. When Mom was taken to the hospital, she was segregated away from everybody else because of the hepatitis. And they knew Mom wouldn't be able to see me. So they took pictures. I'm not sure how long I'd been at the hospital by this time, but they took pictures and they wrote a letter, which I still have put away. I'm not sure where, but I know I still have it. She even kept the little tags off the incubator and the bassinet, so I have all of that. And they wrote a letter telling Mom about me so that she could see me. And I was the only baby in the NICU, and they had bought me a mobile and put it above my crib and at my bassinet and everything. And I stayed in the hospital for a long time, a couple of months at least. I think it was like 3 or 4 months. And they knew pretty much right away that there was a possibility that I had cerebral palsy. Mom took that in stride. She was like, well, she's still my daughter. You know, I'm going to love her. I'm going to raise her. I'm not going to treat her any different than I do her sister. And she taught me, just because you had a rough beginning or just because you don't do everything exactly the way another person does it, doesn't mean you can't do everything everybody else does. You just have to find your own way to do it. So that's my beginnings. That's how I was born with cerebral palsy, and maybe in another video I'll share a little bit about my early life with you, but I wanted to tell you about my beginnings. And if you have a baby that has been born with cerebral palsy, or even not cerebral palsy, but is a preemie, a little bitty thing, don't give up on that baby. You don't know what God has planned for that child. Just because they have a disability or they're born early doesn't mean they can't do everything they want to do and more. They can accomplish everything. They just may have to go about it a bit differently, or it might take a little bit longer to accomplish. Don't give up on your dreams or your children. Love each other. Take care of each other.